Well, the haters gonna hate, and the faker's gonna fake, baby. I'm just gonna making luck, a Dominion podcast. Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
I'm back in Adam's basement.
Hey, hey, me too.
Yeah,
I'm back down here.
Yeah,
it's pretty nice. It's a little chilly.
Yeah,
but not so chilly that I have to put the hoodie on, even though I might do it. But I just want to sport my Flying Pig 5K shirt. I ran a 5K this weekend, and I'm proud of myself.
I just want to say to the audience, welcome back.
Jake's here. Did you miss him? I miss Jake.
Well, yeah, and I want to welcome all of you back to me.
Yeah.
And
hope you wanted that.
Yeah, LOL. Yeah. So, I took a little vacation from Dominion. I took a lot of time off of playing Dominion because
Because you wanted to.
I wanted to, and that's going to tie into the topic of our episode.
Which is Ranger!
And also, are you playing too much? So,
well, yeah.
It's a mini-sode, or a half episode with Ranger, half episode, are you playing too much?
Yeah,
We're going to talk about that.
So, before we actually get into that content, I just want to take a minute and, I guess, blow some smoke up your butt, Jake.
Oh?
About this. So, like, we have a podcast, and we put out content every week, and that's important. Sometimes you get a mini-sode. Great. No one complains about that. But at the same time, it's important that the podcast is sustainable. That means we're both happy doing the podcast. And both of us put in a lot of work to make this podcast happen.
For sure.
I obviously do all the editing work, and I do the outlines, and I'm on a lot of the episodes. Jake, he's on a lot of the episodes too. He's on almost as many as I am. The difference is statistically insignificant, and he also puts in a lot of work doing outlines. And you also drive over to my house once every week at your own expense, both time and gas money and whatever, to make this happen. And really, that's just to make the quality podcast better.
Yeah.
And I still see people refer to this podcast as the Adam Horton podcast. And like,
which I think is funny, but
it is funny to be fair.
Yeah.
But like, it is definitely not the Adam Horton podcast.
Yeah.
Like, there are really three people that are integral to making this podcast happen.
Especially funny because like there are episodes you haven't even been in.
Yeah. It happened. That was an okay episode. I mean, it was about anyway.
Yeah.
But there are three people that are really important to making this happen. Yeah. And Jake is one of those three people. We couldn't, before we had Jake, we didn't really have the podcast back, right? We had 6 episodes that sat there and then nothing happened to it. And I'm really glad that Jake is on the podcast. I'm really glad he works as hard as he does.
Oh, I'm happy to do it, yeah.
And that's the point. You're happy to do it, and we got to keep ourselves happy to do it, which means taking some time off. But that means that doesn't mean you won't get any content. But at the same time, like,
yeah, sure.
It's really great. First of all, that you can go through ups and downs with Dominion and still be here on the podcast saying good things. That's really important. It's also really great that Wandering Winder is able to step in, even when he's not feeling well, on relatively short notice, and bang out some episodes.
Yeah, no, I was thrilled that... I was also just thrilled to see that, like, I could take some time off. And
it's like I'm his boss, and he asked me for time off, and he's like, I'm going to get fired, and I'm like, no, I'm a good boss.
Yeah, no. But yeah, no, I'm glad that it happened, and like the content kept coming in too. Yeah, that Wandering Winder and Adam both can keep doing stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
we only had to use one mini-sode, and you got like a month-long vacay from the podcast.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I focused...
You take a permanent vacay from the podcast.
Yeah. No, I played a lot of Overwatch. Remember just how bad I am at that. I'm like, all right, got to make this Dominion thing work, I guess. And so
can't go pro in Overwatch. Huh?
Yeah, no.
Dang it.
Yeah,
it's too bad.
Yeah, if I work really hard, I might be average.
Ooh, that's pretty good though.
Yeah, if I work really hard at it, I might get to like the skill rating of like the median percentile of the population. Ooh, yeah.
So that's a real accomplishment, Jake.
Yeah.
I'd be really proud of you.
Well, there are like haves and have-nots of like FPS skill.
Yeah.
Like there are just a bunch of people who like take to every FPS game and like it just clicks for them. I'm not one of those people.
Oh.
I enjoy them quite a bit. Those games, but
is it like that for Dominion? Haves and have-nots?
I don't know. I think you can learn how to play Dominion a little more easy. Not that
I learned how to play Dominion.
Not that you can't learn how to play those other games too. Like you can work at it and get a lot better.
Yeah, or become average.
Like I have almost done.
Yeah.
But like Dominion, I think that you can work at it and the results are not guaranteed. Like you're not guaranteed to get good at Dominion just because you work at it, but like you're probably more likely to than if you start out being bad at something else.
Sure. I guess. I don't know. I really don't have anything.
This
to
is also
to.
really hard to quantify
Yeah.
too. It's kind of hard. I don't really know what question I'm trying to answer here.
Well, I mean, here on Making Luck, a life podcast, we try and tackle the subjects that are, the tougher ones.
The questions that nobody asked. But
and that's why you're listening, isn't it?
Yeah. So speaking of questions
that
nobody asked, we're talking about Are You Playing Too Much? But before that, we have a kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that kingdom had some cards in it.
Yes.
Episode before was on Lurker, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Let's read the cards in the kingdom.
All right. So in this kingdom, we had Workers' Village, Catacombs, Patrol, Tragic Hero, Wine Merchant, Lurker, Vassal, Bridge, Rats,
Hey, Toby.
Silk Merchant. This kingdom had the landmark Aqueduct, and it had shelters. And I did not read those in cost order. My bad. So once more for our audio-only listeners, we had Lurker, Vassal, Bridge, Rats.
Hey, Toby.
Silk Merchant, Workers' Village, Catacombs, Patrol, Tragic Hero, Wine Merchant. We had the landmark Aqueduct, and this kingdom had shelters.
All right, so I remember when Wandering Winder and I first talked about this kingdom, we were kind of on the fence of like, well, is Lurker really all that good? Like, it's just Lurker. There's not any, like, huge overall synergies. It's just a whole bunch of individual things. Like, oh, there's Catacombs, then there's Silk Merchant, and there's Rats. Woo, look at all the things you can trash, and they do stuff. And,
yeah,
Jake came up with something that's really good.
Yeah, so I want to actually give a shout out to Titan Drake here. He said something in the Discord that I didn't think much of at the time, but actually having played this out and gone for the strategy I went for, I think he got it spot on, where he said that this board is a pile control board, and pile control is going to be one of the most important things to establish and get established dominance over, and that's going to end up deciding the game a lot of the time. So I just spammed Lurkers. I just beelined Lurkers. I opened Silk Merchant Lurker, and then just got as many Lurkers as I could, and then picked up a bridge later on, and then picked up some Workers' Villages and Catacombs using the Lurkers, and it turns out that that's pretty competitive. That getting a bunch of Lurkers puts you in a really good spot. If you win that split 7-3, the thing is this game can reliably end on turn 10 because of all the pile control. Trashing Catacombs empties 2 cards from the supply. Lurker can just empty more cards from the supply. The Lurker pile is already going to be empty, so this kingdom can end the game very, very fast, and the amount of points you end up having tends not to be that important unless your opponent got 2 provinces in that time, and that's hard to do. So we figured that out. We figured out that you can't really lose the Lurker Split 7-3 and be okay. So we played a few games where it went 6-4 and things were more interesting, right?
Yeah, a couple things. First, it was Trivial Not that said that.
Oh. Sorry, I get my T's mixed up.
I know, me too. I had some cardamom French toast tea this morning, and it was like mediocre, and I thought it was really good the last time I tried. But anyway, the other thing is Lurker Spam. It's really good, and it turns out that if you just get a whole bunch of lurkers, you're able to do a lot of great things.
Yes.
And the fact that you can really put 9 lurkers in the deck and be okay, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Rats is here.
Yeah, for sure, because the odd number of lurkers you have can be cantrips, right?
Well, any number of lurkers that you have, like,
yeah,
at some point you want to be drawing cards and finding your stuff. The idea is you want to get 1 billion buys with a bunch of workers' villages and a couple bridges and some silk merchants.
Right.
And once you have all those buys, you reduce the cost of everything by maybe 1 or 2 by playing a couple bridges. And now all of a sudden you can do almost anything you want. You can empty estates and not even think about it. And you can use Lurker to take down a couple of the more expensive piles, and holy crap, the game is over.
And you don't really need to do a lot of work to empty those piles. You kind of just need to kind of blow on the kingdom a little bit, and the rest of it'll fall over.
I mean, a lot of the way you build it is emptying those piles pretty aggressively. Because if you collide 2 lurkers, normally what you find yourself doing is you play the first one, you trash a catacombs, you gain a thing.
Usually for me it was a workers' village. A lot of the times it was bridge or silk merchant too.
Yeah, but it could be you gain a rats, man. Don't do that. So
there are easier ways to gain rats.
We'll talk about rats later. But then your second lurker, you just grab the catacombs from the trash.
Yeah.
And so now you've played 2 lurkers. You've gained 2 things. And, that's already really great, especially because one of them was the catacombs. But if, you put a silk merchant in your deck, you get the benefits of that. And you also get a whole bunch of flexibility on what kinds of things you can gain, etc. So, 2 lurkers is great, doesn't even take an action. And so getting pairs of lurkers is really great.
Sure.
There's also the idea that you don't want to leave anything juicy in the trash for your opponent. So the other lurkers, or as many lurkers as you need. Once I want to find the bridges, I can just cantrip all of them.
And that was actually part of the reason that you wanted to get so many lurkers, is that there was this idea that you didn't want to leave juicy stuff in the trash for your opponent, but as long as your opponent had some lurkers, that didn't matter so much, I don't think, because the thing is that they didn't just get the free thing out of the trash, right? It's not like they got to do that at 0 opportunity cost. It's the difference between that and whatever else they were going to do with that lurker. So, you leave something juicy in the trash for them, yeah, they can get it. You don't do it for no reason. But, it's not like you handed that thing to them and they got it for free. They had to play a lurker to do it. What else would that lurker have done? It's hard to say. But, I don't think leaving things in the trash was a huge concern unless, you didn't one of the Lurker Split got really lopsided somehow.
Sure, I think I would not be comfortable leaving Catacombs in the trash. Catacombs is just such a good card. There's not really much thinning, and Catacombs is the best source of draw, so I think that's important. And also, workers' villages are really great, so I wouldn't leave those in the trash. But, leaving rats in the trash, sure, that seems reasonable. And there were times that I think I was okay leaving a silk merchant in the trash. If I wanted to make sure I got the coffers and the villager, normally the villager was the more important part of this.
Yeah, playing Lurker as a village, basically, was kind of nice. Sometimes you play the Lurker to trash a silk merchant, you got plus action, and a villager. Coffer as well. But, so that can be a good way to continue your turn, just to have that option.
Yeah, villagers are pretty important here. If I always wanted to make sure I had 1 on hand, and later on in the game, potentially having 2 is pretty important.
You had to play really conservatively with them, I thought. Cause
I didn't get as many as... I didn't spend as many villagers, but I went a lot more aggressively for the workers' villages, for sure.
Yeah, I think playing conservatively with your villagers is quite often good to do.
Well, yeah.
But I think here it was just one more case where it was really good and really important to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Aqueduct points never came up. Nobody ever gained a treasure. A lot of this kingdom didn't play. You didn't get Wine Merchant because Bridge was just better. I think Adam called that one. Tragic Hero, you know, and Patrol
not Catacombs.
just got outclassed by Catacombs. Yeah.
So there were a couple of points of contention. The first one was actually even Wandering Winder said you want to open Silk Merchant Lurker, and I said I think I'm leaning towards Bridge Lurker, and Jake said I think you came on the side of Silk Merchant.
Yeah, I independently said Silk Merchant Lurker for sure. I didn't even consider Bridge Lurker.
Yeah.
And
I think there's like zero difference. Like I think both of them do pretty much the same thing. If I open Bridge Lurker, I'm gonna get the Silk Merchant ASAP. If you open Silk Merchant, you're getting that bridge soon enough, right?
Yeah, I mean this is true. You end up wanting these are Bridge and Silk Merchant are both cards you want in the deck, and they're both cards that help you get
two lurkers
in your next shuffle, which is kind of a priority. The question is, you know, how good is the, benefit? Yeah. How good is the benefit of one over the other? And you cycle a little faster if you have the Silk Merchant because you're drawing more cards. How important is that? Having the Bridge in the deck a little earlier helps you get, be able to do things like buy Catacombs.
Yeah, I thought buying Catacombs would be a lot more important than it really was. There are a couple of draws where the Bridge can be slightly better than the Silk Merchant.
There are a couple of draws where the Silk Merchant can be better than the Bridge.
It can be, but I don't know, it just really didn't ever seem to make any difference in any of the games that I played at all.
So, I mean, either one of those is reasonable, and you pair it with buying a Lurker.
Yeah, for sure. And you open with the Lurker because you want so many stinking Lurkers in the deck.
Yeah.
And
it's not because the Lurker's going to do anything for you the first time you draw it.
Yeah, most of the time you're just going to trash a rat.
Yeah.
It's maybe a Silk Merchant.
Right. It's not... Yeah, the reason you're opening with the Lurker is to start on that Lurker Split. Get started on it.
For sure.
It's very important.
Yeah. And then there's, I think, one of the more interesting things.
Yeah, okay. So
let's talk about Toby.
We never came to an agreement on this.
Yes, I'm definitely right about this. I feel great about my read.
Okay, Adam thinks you get rats here.
Yeah, I think rats is actually good here. And by actually good, I'm going to say that the difference this makes is very small. But you don't see any trash for benefit cards. Why are we even considering rats? Couple of things. First of all, Catacombs and Silk Merchant, trashing those from hand does have a benefit. There was a game I won early on because I was able to trash a Catacombs with a rat and pile out that way. There was also a game against a bot that I won where it was important for me to trash the Silk Merchant to a rat to just get the villager token, right? Because I had a bunch of Silkies and I needed actions, and that was a way.
Worth noting, though, you had Workers Villages in your deck, and you drew the rats instead of those.
Actually, so that build, when I did that, I was going a lot heavier on Silk Merchant before deciding that was bad, so I'm not gonna put too much stock in rats trashing Silk Merchant. That may just be awful. However, there is a benefit, there are two benefits that rats has. Benefit number one is Vassal. If the opponent is not going... If they're going to play money, try and get some provinces with some Aqueduct points, Vassal turns out to be pretty important, because you do need to get some points. And you need some money.
To be fair, I never played that. I never played against that strategy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to defer to you on it, because you played against the bot who goes for that, right?
Right.
And so maybe I could see Vassal being important in that case.
The thing is, the bot doesn't get Lurker, though.
Right.
So you can just spam Lurkers and do whatever you want and win, pretty much.
Whatever.
But the Vassal does help there, and that's the thing. And Rats does increase your action density for Vassal, okay, to a point.
Yeah, but then it's maybe auto-playing Rats, and
That's not always good, but if you do it right, it's not bad.
And, okay, so in your defense, for the Rats... The thing is that the game is so quick that if the rats make your deck worse, it might not matter.
Well, yeah, if you get too many rats, which it's definitely possible to do, there's some... We'll publish the videos like I do it in one game. It's definitely possible to do it, and yeah, your deck can definitely be worse. The idea is that even with no other synergy. The
Yeah.
Catacombs, the Silk Merchant, the Vassal. Even if there's none of that synergy, the rats can still be helpful. I mean, yes, it trashes the Overgrown Estate, that's good. Even without that, it can still be helpful. Because if you have, say, you got a rat and you trashed a thing and then you had like 2 or 3 shuffles later, and let's say you have like 4 rats and you have 3 of your starting cards gone. So you still have... and you want the Necro. So you have 6 Cobblers left in your deck.
You don't trash the Necro.
Yeah, so the Necro isn't really a bad card. You're short on villages. So let's say you have 4 rats and 6 bad cards in your deck. Now, the alternative to that is having no rats and 9 bad cards in your deck. But now you have these 4 cantrips, and you're likely to line them up with one of those 6 bad cards. And now you had to draw, where otherwise you might have drawn 2 bad cards, now you drew a rat and a bad card. And while your turn is crappy, it's less crappy with the rat because you got to draw 1 card out of it. So you're kind of temporarily decreasing the number of stop cards in your deck by having some rats, just a little bit of rats.
Okay, this is true. And I want to be clear that I don't think that the rats are actively harmful.
If you do it right.
I mean, they can be if you do it wrong, but even if you are careful, the rats are not actively harmful, and they do provide a slight benefit. The thing for me is, when do you get rats versus something else? There's sometimes rats in the trash, and you gain those at a low opportunity cost, but the opportunity cost was drawing a card with your Lurker by trashing a rat, or something like that. So I never found time for rats. Never found time to get one. Never really saw value in doing it.
So I think the time to get one is definitely not when you could be trashing a Silk Merchant or a Catacombs or gaining something. Those are definitely better than getting a rat.
Right.
If I'm going to get a rat, it's because there was a rat in the trash, and I'm playing a Lurker, and I only have the 1 Lurker, and I don't want to leave anything good in the trash. So the opportunity cost is only drawing a card with that Lurker.
Yeah.
So now I'm looking at, do I draw a card with this Lurker now, or in 2 to 3 shuffles, potentially draw 2 to 3 cards when I'm trying to put these different cards together, my village and my catacombs, or find my bridges or something like that, or play more Lurkers so that I can empty piles.
Okay, sure. I can
and
see.
So there's the trade-off, right?
I can see there may be some value add to the rats at that point.
So I'm saying that that it is possible that rats is good for you. Just be aware that if you do it too little, it doesn't really help you at all. But whatever. If you do it too much, it's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, this is why Rats is one of my favorite cards. Actually, it's funny, because this kingdom has 2 of my favorite cards in Dominion, and I never thought to buy either one of them. Tragic Hero and Rats. But anyway.
Peace, Tragic Hero. He's
so,
with Harambe now.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting, and this is part of why Rats was for so long my favorite card in the game, is because... I don't end up thinking it's worth getting here, but when it is good, you still have to be careful. because it can screw you over even then, and you have to really be watching it and executing it well. So, this kingdom was interesting, I think. I'm, fine with never playing it again.
Well, there's not much trashing here, and that means that luck can play.
Sure. The order the order things come up for you around like turn 8 or 9. One of you is gonna have shuffled your cards in a way that's like, I'm gonna kick off this turn, and one of you is less likely to have done that. And
if you get a rats though.
Yeah. If everything had been equal up to that point, the person who shuffled better is gonna win at that point. But
that's Dominion.
This is also assuming that you both
segue.
executed.
That's a good segue into our topic here. Yeah, actually.
Okay.
So goodbye kingdom. Why don't we talk about this? Yeah.
So this question, are you playing too much, has been on our list of outlines for a long time. We've been thinking about covering this for a while, because there is a point where you play too much and it's actually not helping you. And we thought, what better a time to cover it than after I literally had a nervous breakdown. Yeah. No. So
did you actually have a nervous breakdown?
Probably not.
Okay, but, so when you said literally, you meant figuratively.
I meant literally, kind of whatever. But
2019 literally, which means figuratively.
So there are two aspects of this. There's the obvious one, which is that Dominion is supposed to be fun, and that's important. But there's the less obvious one.
Can I let me give you my entire offering to this subject right here.
Yeah.
It's the obvious one.
Yeah.
Dominion should be fun.
Yeah. I don't want to detract from that. I want to give that point its lip service because it is important. But there's also one that I find more interesting, yeah?
Just finish giving it the lip service real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
No one's a professional Dominion player. No one's livelihood is at stake. We're playing a game, okay?
Sure.
We're playing a game. If you're not having fun playing the game, don't play the game. Until you start having fun playing the game. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
The end.
But and then there's this obvious but then there's this aspect of just wanting to see how good you can get at something.
But I do that because it's fun for me.
Right, and that's the competitive spirit. Yeah. They're intertwined.
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of what we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes or so is going to apply to more than just Dominion. But I'm just going to talk about Dominion. You can decide for yourself how much it applies to other things and in what ways. But
Making Luck, a literal podcast.
Yeah, so there's the obvious part where Dominion's supposed to be fun, but it's also interesting that there's a point where playing too much might actually be keeping you from getting better. Or at the very least, not helping you get better as much as taking a break would. So you might have more mileage in improving by taking a break than playing more.
I'm definitely learning about how brains develop because I'm watching my child's brain develop and trying to help that, and
also mine. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But sleeping is really important for learning.
Yes.
So if I bang out 10 games of Dominion, that's not as good as
an hour of sleep.
Playing 5 and then sleeping and then playing 5 more. Right, or playing 3, then sleeping, then playing 3 more. Right, sleep is important.
Yeah, and it's not just sleep. It's not just literal fatigue. I want to talk about something called decision fatigue, which is a real psychological concept. It has been talked about, analyzed over multiple peer-reviewed studies, and it's basically the idea that the more decisions you make during the day, the more your ability to make decisions deteriorates. Your brain gets tired. Why do you think when you go to the supermarket, all the candy is right at the register? Because you've been making decisions as you've been shopping.
And that's how we ended up with these Starburst Fave Reds.
Yeah.
They're delicious. That has a lot to do with it. Do you mind if I have?
Yeah, go for it.
But that's, we can't, we're trying to do a podcast where the point is talking and we can't stop eating them.
Yeah, right.
Because we have to make a decision to stop eating them.
Right, I can't do it. Yeah, so I just want to say, this aspect of decision fatigue, this idea that the quality of your decision making gets worse the more decisions you make, that's not my opinion. I'm not speculating here. This happens. It's been observed and documented across multiple peer-reviewed studies, as I mentioned, and how we can argue about how much it applies to Dominion, but it's also.
I think it definitely does.
Yeah, Dominion is very, very demanding of many of your cognitive resources. You are looking at all kinds of information. You are making obviously decisions every turn, but also you're making decisions about what kind of decisions you are making because you're making decisions about what information is important to keep track of.
That's the whole point of this podcast, right?
Exactly. And the other aspect of decision fatigue is tied to a more sort of now controversial and debatable psychological phenomenon, but I'm going to assume it exists for this podcast. Ego depletion.
I'm going to take the axiom of choice here.
Yeah, so...
I'm sorry, if anyone is offended by accepting the axiom of choice, please don't stop listening to the podcast.
But it's your choice to do it. But yeah, so...
or it isn't.
Yeah, so... The idea of decision fatigue is kind of inseparable from the idea of ego depletion. The idea of ego depletion basically just being that you have this like stock of willpower that can deplete over time. That like you actually can run out of energy in a way that is completely independent from your physical state of being, your mental state of being. So it's not just the sheer amount of choices, it's also thinking about how much these choices are weighing on you and how much stress they're putting on you, what kind of mood they're putting you in. So when you have started to play too much Dominion, if the game is... you're kind of getting sick of Dominion your the quality of your decision making might go down. It's not that hard to see why you might actually start playing worse when that's this whole concept of tilt, right? Where we talked about.
I mean, it's not just tilt. Even if things are going well for me, like I've gone to tournaments where I played Dominion nonstop for like 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
You've done the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just hard. You feel drained at the end, and it's not. You were sitting at a table, right?
You're not like physically tired.
Yeah.
You're just mentally exhausted. You want to go watch TV or something.
And I'm gonna let the guy with the actual knowledge of human psychology. So that's you got more than me. I'm going to let him talk about what it is and how it works, but I can tell you that it's real because when I played Dominion for a long time, I feel it. I feel tired. Not only, when I'm playing with... But, like, if I'm going to play really well, you have to think a lot more, and it's a lot more draining. It happens a lot faster.
And you also, like... The thing is that you also... and how does this impact you long-term as a player? The answer is not well. Because, like, you're not...
Potentially.
We say that you learn more by the mistakes you make and by your losses than your wins.
You can learn more from that.
Yeah, can. Can is the key part. Because, like, if you're not in the mindset to do it, like, you can get to a point where you're not actually... Yeah, you've actually shut your mind... Without realizing it, you've shut your mind down to... being able to take lessons from the games you've been playing, and that can really hinder you actually becoming better at Dominion.
Yeah, it's like Jake wants to get really frustrated when I win by going for rats every time without accepting that it's because I went for rats.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but so the thing is, we've said before that if you want to get good at this game, you have to play a lot, and that's true. Most of the good players, they do play a lot, but getting better doesn't mean playing more. It's weird.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have this like base of having played a lot of games, but like playing more beyond that doesn't necessarily help you get better. And like you look at, we were talking about the leaderboard, if we're gonna hold that on a pedestal.
Oh yeah.
Like you look at the top X number of players, like the top
55.
like the top 100 players
55.
or the top 55 players. They've all got a certain number of like minimum games. Like they know what they're doing. But, like, the ones that are higher up haven't necessarily played more games. And, you go through get on Scavenger, look at the leaderboard, you can look at these people's profiles, look at how much the top players are actually playing over the last few weeks. The answer may actually surprise you. It'll surprise me, too, because I didn't look it up, but, but I'm assuming it's less than...
55 or so.
Okay, so final takeaways to this, and I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
This is the point,
here.
like at the Jerry Springer show, where he moves in front of that painting.
Yeah.
Does the final thoughts. All right.
Okay, you're dating yourself because nobody. I know. Who Jerry Springer
I'm dating
is.
my wife, and we're also engaged and married, and she's my baby mama.
Oh, nice.
And my roommate.
Oh, that's good for you. Okay, so. Final takeaway here, I just want to say that if you are somebody who is trying to get better at Dominion, who it's important to you to play well at Dominion, I just want to encourage you to go at your own pace. Even if your goal is to become the best Dominion player in the world,
Put the Pokemon theme song in here.
Nobody said you have to do it by tomorrow. So feel free to take a break. Feel free to go at your own pace, and you might be playing too much.
Maybe. If it's not fun, you're probably, should probably stop.
Yeah, but Peasant and Page are still crap.
Yeah.
And, like, those cards just shouldn't exist, and I'm never going to think any differently, no matter how long of a break I take. Anyway.
There's, so one more thing before we move on to Ranger.
Sure.
Jake and I did have a discussion before the episode that doesn't quite necessarily fit. It's a little bit tangential.
Yeah.
But I'm going to include it probably as an Easter egg,
Sure.
an extra Easter egg. So at the end of the podcast, after everything, if you want to stick around and listen to that, go ahead. It's not refined. These are just ideas we're spitting out of our mouths. If I say something that's not right, we're just kind of saying things I haven't thought all of it through. However, if you want to listen to it, maybe it's interesting to you.
Yeah.
We'll put it out there. And now Ranger.
Yeah, Ranger. So, Ranger's from Adventures expansion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a 4-cost action from Adventures, and it says +1 buy.
I like where this is going.
Yeah. And then it says, turn your journey token over. It starts face up. Then, if it's face up, +5 cards. Nice.
Yeah, so it has to... The first time you play it, it doesn't do anything except give you +buy. And then the second time you play it, it gives you +5 cards in addition to that +buy, and then it alternates back and forth.
I think by far the most important thing about Ranger is that it shares the journey token with a couple other things in that expansion, like Giant or Pilgrimage. And I just want to put out there that doesn't f***ing matter. Okay? I played a lot of games of Dominion, and not once has it mattered that it was the same token. Ever.
I've had, like, a game where, like, it was Pilgrimage and Ranger, and it mattered one time where I paid to flip over my token because I know I was drawing my Ranger next hand, and...
Alright, good for you, man.
It usually doesn't matter.
We're not going to talk about it anymore in this podcast.
This is true. Okay.
So yeah, Ranger, we're going to talk about it.
Okay, yeah, so Ranger is terminal draw, and it has +buy on it. And we've talked about a bunch of other cards on this podcast that are terminal draw. They increase your hand size, and they have +buy on them. And we've made the same set of points about all of them. And they all apply to Ranger as well, which are that any single card that increases your hand size and gives you +buy gets you most of the way there to making building a lot being worth it, because you've already got the trappings of a high payload deck. You've got a bunch of cards in your hand, and you've got an extra gain from that one card. So, like, anytime you see those two things on the same card, it's immediately a pretty efficient build to what people call a high payload deck.
Yes, that's what everyone calls it.
Yeah.
Well, all the people that are super awesome.
Right.
For sure. Well, yeah, I mean, plus cards and +buy, they go well together.
Yeah.
Kind of like Jake and Adam. They go well together.
Or Red Starburst and slightly lighter Red Starburst.
I love the fact that the bag is right next to the mic, so that crinkle is going to be super loud.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. These things are frickin' delicious.
Yeah, that's the most Starburst.
I probably will, but I'm going to speak for a little bit. So.
Oh, I just do both.
I noticed.
Yeah.
So there's, I think that it's useful to compare Ranger to a couple other cards.
Okay.
And by comparing them to those cards, we can see about how good Ranger is. This is actually true for any card that you've never seen before, or even a card that you have seen before. You can compare it to other cards that you know well and get an idea. So Ranger's kind of in the Smithy family, right?
Sure.
It draws you cards, but it takes up an action.
Yeah.
And Smithy is OP.
This is true.
Hashtag please nerf Donald please. Hashtag nerf Smithy 2019.
So it's interesting. I mean, like any terminal draw card, like in the Smithy family, it wants to be with a village, right? It's it is looking for certain enablers. It's looking for certain synergies, and a village is chief among them. I would go out on a limb and say that Ranger is one of the most village-hungry cards in Dominion.
Yeah, and it's this comparison that I think sheds the most light on that. Because you can look at the card and you can say, oh, well, I always get the buy, so that's cool. But half the time when I play this, I draw 0 cards. And
Yeah.
half the time when I play this, I draw
A billion
5 cards. Yeah. So I must, on average, I draw 2.5 cards with every ranger, and I get a buy.
Yeah.
So that's pretty close. I'm trading like a half a card for a buy from Smithy, and that seems pretty great.
So, yeah, I mean, that's not telling the whole story.
It is
right?
definitely not telling this whole story.
Yeah, that's not... I mean, there are times when Ranger starts to look like that. There are decks where that kind of math for Ranger gets to be valid. But that's not for most of the game. And we'll get into the whys of it. But the why are we calling it so village greedy, and how are we comparing it to these other cards?
Well, in order to ever draw cards from a ranger,
Yeah.
you have to play 2 rangers, and they have to both be terminal.
Yes.
So, like, I mean, yes, you're getting that out of the card, but the thing is, you have to play 2 terminals to get it. So, like, we can talk about this burstiness, like, oh, well, you get them all at once, and
Yeah.
sure, you would really like to start your turn with your journey token face down, so that
Right.
way the first ranger you play is the one that draws the cards. I want to have the cards earlier in the turn, and that's obviously better. And
So
we can use that to our advantage.
yeah, there is this idea that we've talked about and seen in a lot of other cards where having one good turn is typically better than having 2, mediocre ones. And Ranger plays to that to a certain sense.
Mini tactician in that sense.
Yeah, there's the burstiness of it.
Yeah. But let me put a bow back on this discussion, though. You have to play 2 terminal actions, though, to get that effect.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to say 2.5 cards and a buy,
Yeah.
that means the actions that it takes in order to get that, like I need to play 2 terminal actions in the middle of my turn. Apparently that wasn't a big deal.
That's hard to do a lot of the time. And when that's hard to do, it's hard to get value out of Ranger.
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell too much on the numbers here, but like that 2.5 cards starts to look a lot worse when you can't line up your business. So if you're taking advantage of the burstiness, that's great. However, is it really like that 2.5? Like, I just tend to put it, I mean, I love numbers. I'd say it leans a lot closer to like +2 cards, +1 buy.
Yeah.
And then some burstiness on top of it.
I mean, the thing is that burstiness is really a double-edged sword. Because...
Is it really a double-edged sword, Jake?
No, it's not. But
it's not.
It's
but
just...
we said it anyway.
Yeah, okay.
You Gavin. Anyway.
All right.
Sorry.
So the burstiness of it, I mean, it's both a positive and a negative. There's the bursting. The burst is nice when you get it, but like the idea that you basically had to put this thing that like functions as a ruined market the first time you play it in your deck.
Feels
like,
pretty bad.
So there are some boards where that plays to, right? That plays to. There are some boards where you're trying to hit inheritance, and it's really important to get that really unattainable price point as soon as possible. Pathfinding, inheritance, maybe you've decided Prince is good for whatever reason.
Totally is.
Yeah. But then there are other kingdoms where you just want to hit 5 a whole bunch, or 4 even. And, at that point, the idea that you, like, half the time when you play this ranger, it's not really doing anything for you, really becomes a detriment.
Yeah, so the first time you ever play a ranger, that's the bad one, right?
Yeah.
You don't get the good one until you've had the bad one. And so, yeah, I mean, we can make the good ones at the start of our turn, and sure, that is what we want to do. But you have to pay your dues.
Yeah.
The first time you put a ranger in your deck, and the first time you draw that ranger, that card sucks. And so I really don't like opening with ranger, because it's important that these cards are going to be doing something to help my turn 3 and turn 4. And ranger's not doing that.
Yeah.
And I think putting that first ranger in your deck so you can start, I mean, that's a painful start.
Yeah, you have to decide when the right time is to do it. And like a lot of the time, you put rangers in the deck a little later than you would put other terminal draw in the deck. We compared it to Smithy, but usually if I'm putting Smithy in the deck, I'm putting the Smithy into the deck earlier on than I'm willing to put a ranger in the deck.
For sure.
Unless I'm using that plus buy, right? If I need that plus buy for something. There are times when there are some boards where the plus buy is even going to be useful on the bad turns. Like I'm just trying to get a bunch of fool's golds or whatever.
Or a bunch of lurkers.
A bunch of lurkers. Okay, so the thing is with Ranger, it's a little weird. It has this sort of unique property in that it kind of serves a different function toward the late game as your deck sort of starts to evolve. Early on, you have like poor control of your deck, and you've got these Rangers and that burstiness that we were talking about, that sort of tactician comparison that really comes to the forefront. You're not shuffling every turn. You're not seeing your whole deck every shuffle. So you're going to have good turns where you draw with your Rangers. You're going to have bad turns where you don't draw with your Rangers.
Yeah, so like in that 0-card kingdom, if I'm going to play Ranger, it does sort of act like Tactician.
Yeah.
I have a crappy turn where I played the bad Ranger, and then I have a great turn where I played the good Ranger.
Yeah, right. So like how many Rangers do you want in that situation? I mean, it depends on your goals. Like usually... when I'm in that situation where I have poor deck control and I'm playing Ranger as baby tactician, I like get one, maybe. Like I'm usually not getting more than that to like try to like get them faster. I usually just accept the fact that like I'm gonna have a bad turn. But then you get toward like not near the beginning of the game in your deck control where you're actually like drawing your deck. Presumably the Ranger's draw is part of that.
Yeah, I think we're saying at this point that you need to have a village.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. There are the times when I would get Ranger without a village. You're like,
I mean, we just got done talking about them. That's it.
Yeah. So like you've got the village. You're drawing your deck.
Oh, and that's bad. What we were talking about, it's not very good.
Yeah.
Continue.
Right. So you've got the village, and you're drawing your deck. And then Ranger starts to play like a little bit of a different role at that point. The concept of its burst draw kind of goes out the window once you're drawing your deck with it. And once you are looking at your deck as this thing that is drawing itself and you're looking at the cards that support that, the on-paper efficiency of it becomes a much more valid consideration. The 2.5 cards per Ranger play, that becomes more of a valid comparison when you're thinking about it in terms of like I'm in the whole deck paradigm and I'm looking at how many stop cards I have, that kind of thing.
The more Rangers you play on a given turn, yes, I would say it gets closer to that 2.5 cards one by.
Yeah.
The thing is, you are giving up a few things. The first thing you're giving up is you have to play a bunch of terminal Rangers on your turn, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you have other terminals you would rather play.
It's super village greedy in that context, right? Because like you don't just need to start with like a village and a smithy. You need to start with like 2 villages and 2 Rangers or whatever.
Or one at least.
Yeah. Or you needed to have an extra one left over because you play like that brings us to the question, how many Rangers do you want in that situation? And I think the answer is usually an odd number. Basically, so you can draw your deck and then have one to turn your token back over to have it ready for next turn.
That's that's an even number.
Holy crap, you're right.
Yeah. So you want to play an even number of Rangers so that your token is always in the good place at the start of your turn, which is the end of the previous turn.
Yeah.
Now you want to playing an even number of Rangers is this is the best case because we're taking advantage of that burstiness, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you need to have an even number of Rangers in your deck. It's also important that you can find a Ranger at the start of your turn. And so if that means picking up some extra Rangers, even knowing that I'm not going to play all of them, it could still be worth it, like to have that third Ranger and then only play 2 of them a turn. Yes, there's a card that you drew that you didn't have to draw, and that doesn't feel good. But the fact that you're not only getting buys, which is important for this kind of deck, but getting cards at the start of your turn, as long as you can have that Ranger there somehow or increase the chances of that, then you're usually in good shape once you're able to get it off.
I mean, what it really comes down to is consistency, right?
Yeah, and when I say Ranger, I mean a village and that Ranger, right?
Yeah.
It's not good enough to just have the Ranger. you need something more.
Yeah, and that's where, like, Ranger gets to look like pretty inefficient deck control at that point.
Yeah,
in terms of
your first Ranger pair feels a lot better than your second Ranger pair.
Yeah, like the amount of cards that are dedicated to drawing your deck that you need to put in your deck is pretty high compared to other methods of doing it, I'd say.
Yeah.
'Cause you need to have a bunch of Rangers because they alternate in terms of what they do. It's a very village greedy terminal. And then on top of that, there's the other stock cards that you were playing in the first place. So what it comes down to is, like, usually, I mean, if there's other draw and there's other plus buy, a lot of the time go for that instead.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm looking at... I usually weight this card a lot closer to the +2 cards end of things.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm looking at Festival and Ranger,
Yeah.
is that really draw? Well, I mean, it
yes.
is, but it's terrible, right? I have to find 4 cards, and then once I found those 4 cards, I've increased my hand size by 1. And yeah, I got a bunch of money and a bunch of buys, but that's really hard in terms of drawing your deck and increasing your hand size. That's not a thing it's good at. It's good at making you money and getting you a bunch of buys.
Yeah.
So, that said, it's certainly not as good as cards that are better at drawing, like a lab that will give you an action along with your +2 cards, or maybe something like Smithy that will give you +3 cards.
Or, we talked about Margrave that gives you plus cards and plus buy, but does it every time you play it.
Yeah, for sure. Most of those other plus card and plus buy things are going to be better at drawing cards. Even something like Silk Merchant that just is +2 cards and +1 buy. The fact that you're getting, not only the Kofefe, which is great, but that villager makes it way easier for you to draw cards with your Silk Merchant, right? Because it's a freaking villager.
Yeah.
I love villagers, man.
Right.
Yeah, that's just miles better than Ranger in terms of raw power level.
If Ranger came with a villager,
that would be OP.
Pretty great. Yeah. So that's Ranger. Take from it what you will. It does some really powerful things, but it's not very good at doing them. But the things it does are quite good.
Yeah, cards and buys, man.
Yeah,
I love them. Super hot.
So
yeah,
there's a kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has Ranger in it.
Yeah.
I will read the cards.
Oh, good. Because I'm busy eating Starburst.
Yeah. Better get some Starburst in there.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I wanna read the kingdom while chewing on a Starburst.
Okay,
You ready?
good. Yeah.
Let's see how well I can do this. Alright. This kingdom has Fool, Smugglers, Blessed Village, Island, Moneylender, Priest, Ranger, Charm, Cobbler, Haunted Woods, and it has Borrow and Basilica.
And don't forget Lucky Coin.
Nice. One more time for our audio-only listeners. Fool, Smugglers, Blessed Village, Island, Moneylender, Priest, Ranger, Charm, Cobbler, Haunted Woods, and we also have Borrow and Basilica.
And
there's Fool, so we got Lucky Coin, and there's Lost in the Woods is a state, and there's Will-O-Wisp because of Boon. Okay, so great. Ranger's in this kingdom.
Yeah, and
It's not the only draw, and it's not the only plus buy, but I actually think it's okay here.
Okay, so we were thinking about it, and I said I'm probably not getting Ranger here. I'm not convinced, but I think I'm probably relying on Haunted Woods for my draw, and I'm probably relying on Charm for extra gains, both for plus buy and also because you can Charm and get Haunted Woods Charm in the same.
Woo!
Yada yada blah, blah, blah. So yeah, or maybe you even get like Haunted Woods Cobbler.
Yeah, so like I originally looked at this and I'm like, oh, look at the synergy between Ranger and Cobbler. Cobbler helps you find a Ranger in the starting hand, but Haunted Woods craps all over night cards, so I don't think.
Oh yeah,
Rip in peace.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which is really unfortunate because Cobbler's a great card, 8 out of 10. But, yeah, it gets hard countered by the Haunted Woods. I think Haunted Woods is important here. The attack is relevant, and also, drawing cards is super great, and I want to do it.
The attack means you can't green as early as you might like to.
For sure. It makes you want to build a lot longer. Island can help you with that. That's a thing.
Yeah.
But
bad at that, though.
It's not the best, obvi. But I think the reason that I would want Ranger has a little bit more to do with the plus buy edge.
Sure.
Putting a charm in my deck to play it as a, plus $2 and plus buy is not the sexiest thing ever.
I don't know. It's no terminal.
Yeah. But if I'm going to draw cards with the Ranger, it's something I want to be doing.
Yeah.
I feel like I can put 2 Rangers in the deck, and I think the deck's better for it.
I mean, putting Blessed Villages in the deck usually does good things for you during the build as well.
Well, so the village split is going to be really important. 1 stack of villages, and there's a bunch of terminals I want to play. Like, everything here is terminal. Except for the things that aren't, obviously.
Good call.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean that's true. So, man, what's the open? I mean, I agree with everything you said. I'm not convinced about getting Ranger. I do think I rate Charm a little higher here than I'm hearing you do. But
I'm not super warm on Charm.
I like the Charm.
I mean, you might get 1, but I'm not sure. I'm not really into it.
I think I'm getting 2. But it doesn't matter. I mean, we'll see. So I'm opening, I think, Priest Smugglers or Priest Silver.
So I think
probably Priest Smugglers.
Borrow messes with it.
Oh yeah, I might go Priest Blessed Village.
So yeah, if I have my 4, I definitely want a Priest in the opening. That's super high priority.
Not negotiable. We're getting the Priest.
I mean, okay, I'm not gonna say non-negotiable, but I really want it. If I manage to get like a 4/3 to where I have the Priest and then I can borrow on my second hand, I would be pretty tempted by the Blessed Village.
Yeah.
If not, I would strongly consider getting a Fool. So like I could do Fool Priest as an opening.
I mean, the Fool's not terrible. It's not great.
That's Fool in a nutshell. Yeah. I feel like it doesn't really matter if you get it or not. Whatever, I don't care.
Well, there are money-ish games I've found where it's actually quite good, but that's not this board.
Well, Fool comes with Lucky Coin, which gives you silvers, which helps the money-ish. The fact that I'm going to be playing the Lucky Coin and getting a silver makes me feel a lot better about getting the Fool, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, how many Haunted Woods are you aiming to have in play every turn?
I'm guessing it's going to be 1 per turn.
I'm probably wanting more than that if I can do it. Like, I probably want to have maybe 2 or 3 in play.
So it's weird.
If I can do it.
Like, I want 2 Haunted Woods in the deck. I want 2 Rangers in the deck.
I think I want like 4 Haunted Woods in the deck.
Yeah, and like if I want more draw, what am I going to do? Am I going to add 2 Rangers, or am I going to add 2 Haunted Woods?
Sure.
And, well, wait, what does Basilica do? When you buy a card, if you have 2 or more left. Okay, that doesn't affect my decision. I think it's a tough call, and I'm leaning towards another pair of Haunted Woods. But like, it's so expensive, right? I mean, if I feel like I can...
That's part of why I like Charm, though, is because, like, you can...
I'll probably have 1 in the deck, so I can, gain Village and Ranger in the same turn. And that's a real thing that I care about.
Yeah.
But that's also expensive, right? 2 villages and 2 rangers is expensive versus 1 village and 2 Haunted Woods. It just depends on what's easier for me to pick up and what's there, and how contested the villages are.
Yeah.
The Haunted Woods doesn't take as many village plays each turn, so if I get screwed and I'm low on villages, then that could be a consideration.
Yeah, right. It takes up half the terminal space in a way. So.
Mm-hmm. I think Island's a pretty okay card. It helps you get some green while being attacked by Haunted Woods.
Yeah,
I think Moneylender's a good card too.
Sure, if there are... Well, Moneylender I'm less sold on.
Yeah.
I would just get another Priest.
You would?
Yeah.
I think Moneylender is better than Priest number 2. There you go.
Why?
It gives you another $1, man. Priest number 2 isn't trashing any estates. Those estates are gonzos.
Gives you an extra $2.
No,
you're
it doesn't.
playing both your priests.
But what are you trashing after that?
Your dumb moneylender that you get. No, I don't know.
Yeah, eventually you do that. That's for sure.
I don't know, to be honest.
Screw you, moneylender.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
I don't know.
Told him. Yeah, man. So yeah, that's what I think. I think we're mostly talking about building the same deck, but there's a couple of different things we would do. Do you and you still think no ranger at all, right?
Yeah, I'm leaning toward no rangers.
All right.
I mean, like, if ranger turns out to be good, it's not gonna rock my world.
Yeah,
but,
I don't think there's this massive difference between our decks. I just think that I'm gonna end up with rangers in my deck. I think ranger's pretty good here.
I think I'm gonna end up with Haunted Woods.
Me too.
Numbers 3 and 4. Whereas you're gonna probably go for 2.
2 rangers.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So yeah.
Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Let us know what you think about this kingdom. If you think we're both wrong, or if you think one of us, me, is right, and only Jake is wrong. We'd certainly like to hear about it.
Are you getting Smugglers, by the way?
I hate Smugglers.
Are you getting it though? I'm probably getting it. I think you get it here. I think it's good.
I guess, but I don't want to talk about it.
It's an annoying card. Like, it's irritating.
It makes me sad.
Yeah.
But screw you, Moneylender. Yeah, screw that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you...
I think Adam's going to reluctantly get Smugglers.
Leave a comment in the comment section. If you're on YouTube, do that. If you are listening to the podcast in other ways or you don't feel like commenting on YouTube, you can go to adamhorton.com. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. It's a blog, it's our contact information, links to the Discord server where we talk about this podcast and all the content that we make, as well as forums that you can go to, post, and those are monitored, and I'll reply to things if that's your fancy.
I'm around.
Jake's here. He's back.
Yeah.
He made it back. He lived.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're all proud of him.
Made it right back to Adam's basement.
Yeah. And we'll see you next week. A Dominion podcast. Yeah. Oh, so the other thing I wanted to... So, you were upset about there's a lot of luck in Dominion, right?
Yeah.
And, there is.
Yeah.
On the other hand, do you believe that at the highest levels of play that we know about, that luck is deciding all of the games, or
not all,
of course not all.
I think it's deciding
high enough percentage of games. Like, what do you think that percentage is?
I don't have a number I can pull out.
Is it higher than 55%?
No. It's interesting because I think that there's actually a bell curve to it. I think at the lower levels of play, that the skill difference is so wide usually. There's so much variance that the luck isn't usually really going to decide it. And then, let me rephrase this. At the lower levels of play, where nobody knows what they're doing, luck is going to decide a lot of it because there's going to be a mix of draws and people happen to stumble on the right strategy, or just the cards that they happen to be good on that kingdom. And then, sort of at mid-tier skill, I think that luck kind of wanes and has trouble deciding games because there's more skill disparity. And then as you get toward the higher levels of play, luck kind of comes to the forefront again because as you get more skilled, the difference in skill between you and your opponent is just going to get more narrow. You see this in every competitive game. So as people get more and more skilled at it, the difference between their skill becomes narrower, and so smaller factors end up deciding games. That don't end up deciding games for people who have more room to execute more optimally. Anyway, so that's just, I mean, like, Dominion starts out being about luck before you learn how to play. Then you learn how to play and it's not about luck anymore. Then you get really good and it's about luck again.
I don't think I agree with that last part. So, like, when two people of similar skill play each other, then sure.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's what I'm getting at.
I wouldn't say that every game at higher levels is two people of similar skill playing.
I think it's that they're at higher levels. It's more often two people of similar skill playing, and the skill disparity is smaller. Just
so
because
when you
as
say
you
higher
get
levels,
closer,
when you say higher levels,
I'm saying more skilled players.
But I need you to be more specific in how that's defined, because if you're saying at higher levels, meaning the top 0.5%, say.
I mean, well, we're talking about like 3 people at that point.
I was trying to narrow it down to 50 to 100.
Sure,
so
at the
whatever that
top,
percentage
like,
is.
the top like 100 people, sure. I think like you're going to see. I mean, don't get me wrong. The better people are better. Like, I'm not saying like the people at the very top have earned their place at the top of the leaderboard.
Like,
and they're there consistently.
In your assumption, though, you've already narrowed it down to such a random range. It just happens to be at the top. So you could take that same range. Let's say it's 0.5%.
Yeah.
Let's say there's 2,000 people. No, let's say there's 20,000 people. I don't want to do the multiplication.
Sure, whatever.
Let's say that the top 50 is the top 0.5%.
Sure.
Okay, and so we've narrowed it down to 0.5% because we wanted the top sliver. But if we take any 0.5% in the middle, you're still going to have people that are close enough in skill, and whether those people are, I mean, how do you measure skill, right? By a rating number or something, but like the ones at the top are actually farther apart between 1 and 2 than it is between 1,004 and 1,005.
But we're talking. I mean, I think the average 2 people you pull out of the population as you get toward like more skilled matches. Like
yes,
general.
when you restrict it to a smaller subset of the population who are defined by them being close in skill, then if you take 2 of those, they're going to be closer than the 2 of those from the whole set. Of course they are.
But like looking at people who are higher skilled is restricting them in a way that, like, I mean, you're not going to.
Point.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, like. Sure. So when 2 people are of similar skill, then yes, smaller factors like luck tend to decide it. I don't think we disagree on what exactly is going on.
I agree with that.
But the thing is that you get toward like lower the lowest level of play. Nobody knows what they're doing. The skill is pretty close to each other. Nobody really has much room to display skill with the game.
Even if they aren't close to each other in skill, if they're bad enough, luck will decide it anyway, right?
Sure, exactly. And then you get to sort of the middle, like the bulk of the Dominion player base, where like skill will reign supreme because there's room to execute. Like one of them is going to do their thing better than the other person. And then as you get toward the top, better and better people are playing against each other.
So so your assumption is when you get towards the top, I feel like that assumption just gives you the conclusion you want. So whatever. Well, if all you care about is games between high-level players, then sure, you're requiring them to be close in skill. Okay, great. You're going to get that result. The other point is that there's an implication here that because they're at the top of the leaderboard, or what we know of, that there is no room to improve.
No, okay, I guess I did.
You're not saying it, but there's the implication.
I kind of did imply that. I guess I did.
Yeah,
and that's wrong. There
is definitely
room to improve.
So if number 1 and number 2 play each other, and number 2 wins, number 1 could say, I got unlucky. Or number 1 could try and look at that game and see, wait a second, could I have played better? And I would say that in most games of Dominion, at least 55% of games of Dominion, I would say that there is enough room for number one to have played better enough to significantly increase their win rate. And significantly, I mean by at least 20%. 20% swing. So, like, if it was 50-50, he could have turned it to 60-40, right? Or
I wouldn't fight you on that, yeah.
And I'm saying that's a minimum. I would say in over 55% of games, you can get a minimum of a 20% swing. And I would say in a majority of those, you're looking at, like, I would say perfect play beats the best person in the world in over 80% of games. You can get an 80% win rate over number one in the world, whatever that means, with perfect play.
Okay, so, like, perfect play is, like, whatever that means.
Right, whatever that means, right, exactly. I'm just saying there's so much room to improve. That's my point.
Sure, this is true.
And I think that's really important to keep in mind when you're getting frustrated.
Sure. There's a lot of room to improve. It is important to keep in mind. I would, and I mean, we're pulling numbers out of thin air with this because perfect play doesn't mean anything.
How many times have I said 55?
Right. I don't think perfect play would win 80% of the time. I think perfect play would win like 60% of the time.
Right.
Assuming perfect play was going against the people who are currently the best players.
Number one, yeah.
And I'm talking about the real people, like, who are currently playing the best players in the world. Like me. Yeah. I think even perfect play is only going to win against those people, like 60% of the time.
So I've told this to a lot of people, and a lot of people say the same thing as what you just said.
Yeah.
They say that my 80% number is way too high. I think it's conservative. I think 80% is, like, pretty, like, if you average everything, you're going to get, like, 70 to 80, but, like, on those 55% of games where it really does make a difference, like, definitely 80 is a lower bound. That's what I think, and that's higher than most other people, but no one's going to be proven right or wrong here, obviously, and this is just my opinion on the matter.
We're never going to be able to look at something and call it perfect play.
And, like, this isn't the first time I've disagreed with many people who are good at Dominion and good with numbers about this kind of stuff. Whatever. I stand by it, because it's not really falsifiable within my lifetime, but also because that's where I think the state of Dominion is, and even if I'm wrong, even if that's not where the state of Dominion is, I think it's a really healthy attitude to have, because it keeps your eyes, I think it keeps your focus in the right place as a player. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not going to say what personally was going on for you, but I know some things you get frustrated about. And I've been frustrated about those same things too. And what gets me through it now, in the moment, it's garbage. It doesn't help you. Like, I can tell you right after you lose to BS Rats that, like, that's it, and you're gonna punch me in the face, right? Yeah. But, like, 3 years later, when I'm a different person than I was when I got upset about this stuff.
Had some candy.
Had some of these delicious Starburst minis.
Yeah.
Fave Red. Fave Red is the best thing Starburst ever did, by the way. But that's what keeps me from continuing to get upset about those kind of things.
Yeah.